Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
All right, this is the Investor Coaching Show, and I am Paul Winkler. Now, you are going to be hearing a segment from a workshop that we did and we have on our website that you can register for. Now, let's say that you're one of these people that's going through a divorce. Maybe you're in that unfortunate circumstance that you've been told that that's going to happen. Maybe you're the one initiating it and you want to know what to expect financially, what you're going to have to do, the things that you have to prepare. This is a workshop that we are teaching on this particular topic. You go to paulwinkler.com. If you want to see actually the visuals on this, you're going to hear the audio, which is really good. And the ladies that I work with who are certified divorce financial analysts, Arlene Brown and Ann Sawasky, talking about this topic and walking you through the things that you need to know if you're going through this. So check this out, and thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Show. All right, and welcome to our workshop. Thanks for joining us here. We are going to be talking about a topic that, well, some of you may have been through, some of you may be going through, some of you may be dealing with, or maybe you have people that you know are dealing with this particular issue. Either way, what we're going to do, Ann, Arlene, and myself, is just walk you through some of the things that you need to know if you're dealing with, contemplating, or in the midst of a divorce, you're in that unfortunate situation where this is happening, but you just got to figure it out. You don't really have a whole lot of choice in the matter. You got to figure out how to make sure that this goes okay. Now, some people I've known family members. And we'll talk about some family members that have gone through this. And Ann, Arlene, I'm sure you're going to have plenty of opinions on this because you are both chartered divorce financial analysts and
certified divorce financial analyst.
Certified
CDFA.
Divorce. See, I messed it up already. You like that? That's okay. That's not one of my designations. I've got a lot of designations, but that's not one of them. But that's why they're here, is because that's their area. They know this area, and Arlene, having been working in that capacity for quite a while, has it not been?
And mediation.
And mediation, yeah, I knew that. And I'm going to be bringing up questions about mediation. Oh, yeah, It won't be too hard. And having a legal background as well is going to be super helpful. So we're going to jump into things here. This is a workshop that we wanted to put together just because these are areas that a lot of times people don't want to think about, they don't want to talk about, they don't really hear an awful lot about. But we're going to start off with this, talking about the three sources of income. You ladies want to just walk through some of these sources of income: child support, spousal support, marital property. Anything to say about these things as being just one of the areas that we look for income. But there's not the only thing, of course. You have work income, if you're working still. But, so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Right.
And anything on this particular topic right here?
Well, I think that when you're in the process of divorce, one of the things we do is we want to look at where income will come from, especially if you are the party in the marriage that doesn't have as high of an income.
Sure, and then we'll definitely be handling that, because that, of course, can be the case where somebody sometimes that holds somebody in a marriage that really is abusive even.
Right.
Just simply because they're so afraid of losing income.
Let's just back up a little bit, because in a divorce, there are two parties, of course. One that is serving the divorce paper, and one is the one who is being served. Now, if you are the one serving the paper, you are few steps ahead.
Because you already kind of know what's coming. You've been thinking about it, and it isn't a surprise to you. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah,
it doesn't. You don't wake up in the morning and decide to divorce. So you have already emotionally have really thought about it, okay, and probably analyzed your financial situation, okay, and probably as well and this is something that I don't recommend. Hiding income
assets.
and
Yeah,
assets. Okay?
that's some of my questions. As a matter of fact, I'll have some questions for you ladies. So we'll get
if
into
you
that
are
area.
the one who is being served, now there's a lot of emotions going through. Okay, so and it's easier said than done to say, pull yourself together. Very easy to say, but hard to do.
Right.
But again, when it's divorce, it's all about money.
It is. And you know what I always
It's
tell
sad.
people from a legal standpoint is get yourself a bulldog of an attorney.
Well, we'll get to that is whether it's going to be an attorney or somebody arbitrating.
I
but
have
yeah.
a different opinion in that.
I mean, that's what I like. It's like if we all have the same opinion on something, some of us aren't needed, right?
Yeah,
so let's
but-
talk. Let's. Oh, good. I was just
Well,
going to jump.
Gonna say,
Go ahead.
because you have to fight. You
Yeah.
have to fight for your income.
You know. Actually, one of the first movies I watched with my wife.
The War of the Roses?
Yes, that's
Oh, my
exactly right.
goodness.
You nailed it. So I know where you're coming from.
I am more on give, take, wiggle.
Give, take, wiggle. That's going to be a new dance.
I agree, but here's the thing. You need to have the advocate for your side,
yeah,
or you're not going to get
That's-
something back. You're only going to give.
No, that's why you need to educate yourself. And you
Right.
need, once you get that paper in front of you, the first thing you need to do is become a good archaeologist. Dig, dig, dig. If you can dig 3 years of financial data, good. But if you can do the 5-year financial data, better. Okay, so it's dig,
Very true.
dig,
Very
dig.
true.
All right, that's good advice. So start off with child support. Let's talk about that. Go ahead. I'll let you, either one of you, run
Well,
with it.
when it comes to child support in Tennessee, there is Tennessee child support guidelines.
So you have set guidelines.
and it follows the income shares guideline as well.
That's
okay?
a federal.
Yeah.
There's a
So what's
federal
what's the
guideline.
not negotiable part about this? When it says
Well,
it's not negotiable,
there's
talk
federal
about that.
guidelines that are a basis that are normally considered a minimum, and they do it based on the number of children, the income that the two spouses make.
So
and-
does this mean it's negotiable at first, but then after it's set, it's not negotiable? What does that mean exactly?
Well, okay. First, okay, it's the income, the gross income, okay? And when it comes to income, okay, when it comes to child support, it's inclusive and very broad, okay? The definition of income is not only earned income, but unearned income, passive, active, everything. Okay, is includable as
So
income.
passive
when it comes to
income, for example, if you
child
don't know what that
support.
is, you're looking at
Rental.
interest payments, rental payments, something like that.
So, and also, it's a function of the number of days, the parenting days
That's
the
true.
parent is,
Right. Yeah,
is,
because if you're doing a shared custody,
Right.
obviously you don't need as much.
Yeah, you might have
support to
somebody,
the other
sure.
spouse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because sometimes I've seen where people they only have the kids every 2 weeks or
Right.
just on weekends versus, all the
Right.
weekday. Yeah, it makes a
and
lot of
there's
sense.
no such as 50-50. It may start as 50-50, but then you always have the the primary residential parent, okay, which probably will only have 183 days, and the alternate parent is residential parent is 182 days.
If they split it even
So,
down the middle. Now, of course, with this child support, then it's not taxable to the recipient because I think about it this way. When I was learning about this, I was thinking in terms of, well, if two people are living together, husband and wife living together, and one is actually handing money over to the other to take care of the child, that's not a taxable thing. So it's a very
Right.
similar type of thing here,
Right.
which makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. Now, there's some problems with child support. Talk about those a little bit. What is the problem with child support?
The definition of child support support, it starts with the basic child support obligation, which only really the big three: the housing, food, and transportation, and then you do you add the entertainment. Okay, but the rest are not necessarily. You have extraordinary expense for education. Okay, that is not included. It may be looked into,
negotiated, as something. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
All right.
it's very important for the parties with children to really drill down and figure out what the costs are for those kids. Everything. Everything.
Yes.
Health care, insurance. Are they in club sports? That's very expensive. College. Are they in private schools? All of these various things that you don't really think about.
Sure.
But they are important. Now, that being said, this slide says problems with child support. What happens if the amount of child support doesn't cover all these things? Kids are very expensive, and when you divide a household in two, it doesn't mean that you can afford to pay for every single thing. So as probably the spouse that doesn't have as much income, you really need to think seriously about how much of these things can I afford that aren't going to be reimbursed. Because just because we ask for something doesn't mean we're going to get it.
All right, so let's jump into spousal support. This is an area that has changed in recent years, and it doesn't seem like it's a change for the good is the way I look at it right here.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your point of view. But yeah, I mean, it's used to be, in years past when women really weren't in the workplace very much, that spousal support was long-term, could be for life. And in some cases, that's still going to be the case.
Because traditionally the guy worked outside the
Yes.
home and the woman didn't,
Yes.
and that has changed significantly.
Yeah,
Significantly.
but with the advent of women in the workplace and a lot of them making
More
very
money.
good money, now it's becoming less likely that you're going to get spousal support, or you'll get it for a shorter period of
For a
time.
limited period.
And they have this concept now of rehabilitative spousal support, which will give you spousal support for a period of time to help you get training on a more good paying career.
Make you more marketable.
And make you more marketable.
Right, and
Right.
hence it's the idea of giving you a period of transition to get your ducks in a row.
Yes.
Transition is
yes.
different from rehabilitation. Now, when it comes to alimony, I'm losing my thought.
So are you talking
Well,
about the deductibility where it used to be deductible and then it was taxable to the recipient, which made sense because if the person who is
Well,
paying
there-
it typically then have a higher income, and getting that deduction allows more money go to the recipient, and that's the thing that they blew up.
Well, and allows a lot of financial planning.
Yeah,
Now
it
it
makes
doesn't-
way
it-
more.
it-
We
it-
made way more sense before.
Yeah.
Because now it's no longer tax deductible to the payer, and it's not taxable to the recipient.
Yeah, and you may think, oh, well, isn't that good for the recipient? But, you think about it this way. Let's just use a number example. In the old days, what it'd be, somebody has $10,000, and they're in a 40% tax bracket. That $10,000 becomes $6,000, and then $6,000 goes to that person. That's the way, that it used to be. Now you got $10,000, and you don't get to deduct that. And now you end up with $6,000 like that, and then that $6,000 goes. Well, before it used to be. Let me kind of redo that, because the way it used to be was that. Now what it is, you have $10,000, it becomes $6,000, goes to that person.
Because you're paying
as opposed to
tax before.
as opposed to $10,000 going to that person because it's deductible. You don't have
Right.
to pay taxes on it. The full $10,000 goes to that person receiving it. But they're in a 20% tax bracket. You pay 20% in taxes. It becomes $8,000. which they get more money the other way. It was more efficient that way, but I guess the government gets more money if it is no longer tax deductible. And
yeah, so that changed at the end of 2018.
Yeah.
it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. So,
Wow.
So, I mean, the bottom line with spousal support is the answer to, are you going to get spousal support? It depends. It really depends on the situation. It's very fact-based. It's based on the length of the marriage, the income disparity, the
Differential.
parties, and so on.
Yeah. So that's how that works.
Yeah.
Now, Arlene, you're going to add something?
Well, no, what I was saying, yeah, you're right. The first thing that they do is establish who has the ability to pay,
Yeah, the primary
and
breadwinner.
who has the need for support,
Right.
and then look at the other factors like age, okay, physical condition, health condition,
Right.
okay, and training, education, okay,
Sure.
and the contribution of each spouse, and maybe one spouse, yes, she stayed home as a homemaker, but she was very her contribution to being able, her husband being able to get more training and more education.
Right, because she was taking some of the load off of him, allowing him more time to get the
So
training in this
those
particular
are taken
example.
into
Yeah,
consideration.
there's a lot of
For sure.
fact-based considerations in that.
Okay, so post-divorce expenses. Talk a little bit about that. What is it that you're supposed to do if you're working with an attorney in this? Talk a little bit about what you're supposed to provide to the attorney right here.
Well, when you provide, it's not only post-divorce expenses.
Yeah.
You actually start with pre-divorce expenses,
right.
During the process, and then post-divorce expenses. Okay.
Yeah, so you need to look at
past,
all of,
present, and future.
yeah, all of
expenses.
your detailed budget. And the thing that you see with that is people find it difficult to come up with this budget.
I think that's so true, Ann.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I don't think people always know what they spend. And then lots
No.
of times when you get this list of the budget items, you'll find that both parties are claiming the same thing, or, this is also up here in the credit card expense.
Oh,
or,
yeah. So they may inflate it as opposed to when I'm doing a retirement plan. I mean, people typically think they're spending less than they really are.
Yeah, now they may or may not be doing it intentionally, but
Right.
you see that quite often. So
Yeah.
you really have to drill in on those expenses. And to Arlene's point, there's going to be different expenses before and after.
Sure.
You know, you have to account for the attorneys. You have to account for separate.
So you got some
divorce
number
process.
crunching that happens here
Lot
that
of
has to figure out what the ex-spouse needs and for how long they're going to need it, how long is the
Right.
transition period, as you were talking about,
Exactly.
Ann, and then knowing how much that the person can afford to pay. I mean, what
Right.
will happen
Right.
as far as their lifestyle, if they're paying too much in those expenses. Now, modifiable versus non-modifiable.
It depends. There are 4 types of alimony. Okay, the 2 are modifiable, and the other 2 are non-modifiable. In solido, which is alimony in solido, which is the sum lump sum payment, okay, which is sometimes it is attached to the marital settlement.
Okay, so that would be just a
Property
big bunch of money. You just get it in that settlement. So
Yeah,
it might be something we talk about a little bit later with regards to having assets and how much goes to this person over here. Boom. Is that what you're talking about, that splitting, or is it separate from that when you split assets, for example, like the property values? And
Well,
this is a different deal.
Sometimes you have the alimony in lump sum payment in relation as well to the property division.
Division. Oh, okay,
Yes,
okay. That's good.
what
Thanks
I'm
for
saying.
clarifying that.
So
yeah.
that is not modifiable.
Okay, got
the
it.
rehabilitative is modifiable.
Sure. So, let's say
Transitional
the
is
situation
not.
changes down the road where the person isn't making as much, or they end up in a situation that they didn't expect. Maybe the person becomes disabled or loses a job or whatever. you might have to modify that for that particular. Is that a good
Yes,
example? Okay.
And in futuro is modifiable.
Okay, so you can change this. It's not set in stone, but that's often when you hear the cases. My ex is going to bring me back into court, try to get more alimony. So that's what you're talking about with the modifiable. Okay. Now, taxes, social, spousal support, and maybe needing social support. I almost said that. But how do taxes impact spousal support payments? How does that impact things? Are we just talking about it's just not deductible? Is that kind of where we're at with that?
So it's really double whammy for the payer.
Yeah.
Writing that check.
But not
is
necessarily
really
great for the person receiving either, because, they may have been able to get greater spousal payments. I think the government wins in that, really. That's kind of my stance on that one. Insurance support. So this is something that we got to think about because, and I alluded to it a little bit, what if the person becomes disabled? What if the person passes away that is doing the support payments?
Right.
What do you put into place to make sure those payments will continue to go that direction?
And very often there'll be life insurance on the life of the spouse, and that has to
Disability.
be paid, or yes, disability as well. But also you can secure, if there's a note, that very often there'll be a note for an amount owed over time. That should be secured, and it can be secured by real estate or
Okay, so kind of
insurance,
collateralized,
et cetera.
as we
Yes,
would
it
say.
should be
You have collateral
collateralized.
just like hey, if you don't pay this, then you get the asset.
Yes.
If this doesn't
Yes.
get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And let's just talk about disability just really quickly, because one of the things you need to think about with disability insurance, you may have a group plan at work, not recognizing that there's a possibility that it could get canceled. You've got to be aware of that. I would be aware of that. Also, the other thing is many times the disability policies that you have at work don't cover a whole lot of your income. It may only cover 60% of your income.
or sometimes 50%.
Yeah, it could be even less. So, looking at possibly having some kind of other disability policy that bridges the gap or adds to that is something to be thought about. Okay. So those two types of insurance and making those calculations on how much life insurance that you might need to actually to take care of the obligation that's here. Thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Podcast. Now, you may be one of these people that's been listening and realizing, wow, investing, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and financial planning, tax laws constantly changing, and recognizing that maybe you might need some help in this area, but you don't want just anybody to help you out. So we have 10 offices in the Middle Tennessee area, and everything that we do is fee only. We align our interests with your interests. So you can get an initial 15-minute phone call with any one of our offices just by going to paulwinkler.com/call. That's it. Every one of the offices is run by somebody with 20 plus years experience. They're all degreed planners. They all have academic backgrounds in investing, and you can get the help that you need. So if you want to set up a complimentary phone consultation, just go to paulwinkler.com/call. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Now, property. This is where it gets really interesting because it may be different in some places versus others. But you'll have property as marital property, separate property. A lot of times people will say, oh, my dad passed away and I got an inheritance. And what do I do with that asset? So let's talk a little bit about the differences between marital and separate property. What are the differences between those?
Well, separate property is typically going to be property that you brought into the marriage. It also could be an inheritance or a gift. It could be a trust that you had in your name only. Those will typically be separate. Marital property are going to be the things that are acquired during the marriage that were not kept separate.
Yeah, we put it into a joint account, or we both put our money together and bought this, whatever this may be, some item or some asset.
I just want to say, and I said that we're not kept separate. I mean, that's not totally true because When we're going to look at 401k assets,
Sure,
in a
that's a really
marriage,
good point.
and those are kept separate.
Excellent because of tax laws, but that's
Right.
a really great point.
But
yeah.
but those would be considered in the marital estate as well.
Okay.
So.
And Arlene, you were going to...
Sometimes, okay, there are that rollover 401k from previous employer when you were single.
Oh.
And then
Good point.
Oh, that's an excellent
Good
point.
point.
Yeah, sure. You
roll
might have
it
assets
over
that you brought in.
into the 401k and then the marriage, okay?
Yeah.
So it becomes marital, not quite, okay? Because if you can trace the
Right. Well, then-
previous 401k,
Interesting.
okay?
So,
Yeah, that
Arlene's
would've
talking
been
about,
brought
yeah,
into
that's
the
a really
marriage.
interesting
so
point.
that
Right.
can be separate, okay?
And if you have no clue
But
what
then-
Arlene just said, because it may be a little bit complicated, you have a previous job, then you have a 401k, and then what happened when you were working for that company previously to you actually getting married, you rolled it into a current employer, and it was an asset that was acquired before you guys got married, and now the situation is you have to account for that. A lot of times people will roll those old 401ks into IRAs, but in the case you roll it back into another 401k, that can be a different deal. That's really
But
interesting.
that can still be separate, okay?
Yeah,
If you can
okay,
trace that
interesting.
back. But the growth
Yeah.
is marital.
Oh,
Yes,
that's fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
it's a
Point.
if it's a growing asset,
if it grew while
and
you were
the
married.
growth happened during the marriage, it is marital.
That is super, super interesting. So separate property, as we talked about, assets brought into the marriage, left in a separate name, and inheritances are often worried about right here, where
This is-
somebody gets something from mom or dad, and mom and dad would be rolling over in their grave if they knew that this asset went to a person that ended up, being an ex for
This
their
is where
child.
emotions. This is where I
Oh,
have
yeah.
seen a lot of tears.
I'm sure.
in this
I am sure.
inheritances, especially if it's from. But that's from my grandma. Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, you inherited $40,000 and you use it as a down payment. To the marital, and the home is marital.
Yeah.
Okay. You can actually ask reimbursement for that $40,000.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Okay.
That is so interesting.
Again,
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to
Not set in
divorce,
stone.
okay, feelings, being mad at each other, okay, talk to each other.
Right.
So that negotiations, you can talk, you can negotiate. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
That's a good way of putting it. Good way of putting it. Very good. So marital property, we talked about this, stuff you accumulated during the course of the marriage. That's what they call marital property. Then you have the home. Who... it's like the old country song. All I got was the bird. They had it was a parakeet or something like that, or a parrot or something like that. Or no, wait a minute. I like the other song better. It's she got the gold. I got the gold mine. She got the wait a second. She got the gold mine. I got the shaft.
Yeah.
There we go. I'll figure this out.
Yeah.
When it comes to the home, remember you married the person that you are divorcing. You don't marry yourself to the home.
Right, but there are a lot of memories there, so sometimes people do get emotionally attached
There
to the
are
home.
a lot of memories, and
Sometimes
there's
not so
New
great.
memories.
Well, then sometimes they're not
Right.
so great, but what are you going to do with the house?
But that's the thing. A lot of people with children in particular, they say, oh, it's so important. I don't want to upset the kids and make them move,
Well,
or
you may be
we
changing
love
school
their
zones and things
school,
like that. Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, okay.
So they want to keep the house, and I don't always find keeping the house is the best thing to do, especially for a spouse who doesn't have good income, because you'd be better off taking other assets.
it could be a huge liability.
Right,
Wow,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
And I
they
think-
can't afford to stay in that place.
Exactly.
Because now, they say that two live more cheaply than one, and you have one trying to stay in a house that was hard for both of them to stay in, let's say even.
Right.
Yeah,
And then here's the other thing. I have
Taxes.
I
And
had a situation with a client who was getting divorced, and it was not her idea, and her spouse was the one on the mortgage, but he stopped paying after he moved out.
Yes, that was one of my questions I had for you later, is
So-
that, and we'll allude back to it, because that could be an issue, credit and what
Do
happens.
you trust this person
Yes.
to keep paying?
Yeah.
And because if you're both on the deed and you're on the mortgage, it doesn't matter if you say to the mortgage company, "Well, my
That was my
ex-husband
ex's
isn't paying,"
responsibility.
Right,
So
they
what?
don't care.
You're on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So you really have to be in a situation where you would have to trust that spouse to keep paying, even during the divorce process, which takes a while. So, like in this case, he stopped paying right away, and the house is then in default, accruing lots of
Interest and
default
penalties.
interest, and you're losing equity value then by the day. So are you
Right.
better off to disrupt your kids all in one fell swoop, or to have to bring them through a foreclosure down the road?
This has been the Investor Coaching Show. Thanks for tuning in. I am Paul Winkler. You've been listening to a workshop on, if you've been listening for the past hour, on divorce financial planning with Ann Sawasky and Arlene Brown and myself. They are both certified divorce financial analysts, and I hope you have found that helpful. And you want to see the visuals, you want to hear some things over again, by all means, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. paulwinkler.com. You will see the webinar right there on the website. Check that out. And thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Show. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. You want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. You can watch some of the videos there, and if you're not already a client, you can set up a free initial consultation. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.